Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you know that I am in the second half of my deep dive into the Lenormand system, the system that was originally created in Germany under the title, translated into English as The Game of Hope, and then moved over into France when they were exporting it, and the name of Madame Lenormand was attached to the deck for sales, and that version of the deck, well, not this version, this is the same version, but that deck became the most popular under the name of Lenormand. Right? So I can find Lenormand decks here in South Korea very easily. And it's a wonderful system. And it's a system that I think diving into has helped expand my understanding or my proclivities in reading tarot. Yeah, I have incorporated elements of Lenormand style practice into my general tarot reading consciously and I think unconsciously. And I think that has helped me to grow as a reader. And I wonder if that you feel the same. Do you use Lenormand? Do you feel that your Lenormand practice has transformed your tarot practice if you began with tarot? If you began with Lenormand, let me know about that. And if you've incorporated tarot and how that's been for you. I'm very curious about how you see the interaction between systems of reading cartomancy in your practice. Because it's a fascinating thing, I think. Yeah, I noticed that when I started reading more Tarot de Marseille, that my Rider-Waite-Smith background in tarot started to expand. Thoth and definitely the Continental Tarot have brought other layers into the way I read tarot generally. And Lenormand also has helped me to see reading cards in a different way. And the idea of making story with tarot cards, I had that idea originally, but it has grown in a different direction through my work with Lenormand, if that makes sense. And does it make sense for you? I'm curious. So let's talk about it. Friends, I've got a very interesting spread ready for us. You probably already know the title, while I have not discovered it yet. And probably that title is a hint for you, but it's a bit of an awkward or a challenging spread, I think. But before we get to the spread, let me say thank you. Let me say thank you for doing those things that you do, for following me on this journey through Lenormand. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up button, for subscribing. Those things you do help our community to grow. Thank you for commenting in the comment section below, or wherever you find your comment section, because all of those things, those moments of engagement, tell YouTube to show this video or this channel to new people, and they find us, and we grow as a community. So, friends, thank you for doing all of those things. And as promised, I'm going to be showing you the spread. I will first show you the spread and talk about the deck that I'm using. Then I will show you the spread again, and we will read this spread together in several different ways. Are you all ready, friends? Well, here we go. Here's this week's spread. What do you think of that deck? I have to apologize right now because it is a beautiful deck, I think. It's a very precious Lenormand deck for me. It was created by a friend of mine, Mendy Dunn, who is now unfortunately removed from social media She had this deck up on Make Playing Cards, but that is now gone. So I really, really, really wanted to use this deck at least once during this deep dive into Lenormand. And I might bring it back out later again once more when I work with houses, because I might still do that. So this is a precious deck. It's a deck made by somebody that I know, and I think it's beautiful. And it has some very smart elements to it. The images are clear. They're very simple. Yeah. The titles are easy to see, at least for me. I hope they're easy for you to see. And the playing cards are pretty clear to me, because not only do we have the suit in color. No, not only do we have a suit, but the suit is in color, and it's very in good contrast to the background of the card. Whereas, for example, on Robert M. Place's deck, I love his deck, I love his work, but there are a couple of times in, I think it was the Burning Serpent Lenormand, where it was difficult to distinguish the color and the shape of the playing card suit from the background. You know? So this is really, really clear for me. And the images are really clear. And the little butterflies. This is called the Butterfly Lenormand. Did you see the butterflies in the upper left-hand corners of the cards? The smart thing about this deck is those butterflies, I don't know if you noticed, are of 3 different colors. Some of them are white, some of them are black, and some of them are multicolored. I won't exactly go to rainbow, but there is a diversity of color in one of those kinds of butterflies. So the white butterflies are, according to Mendy, the positive cards. The black ones are the negative cards. And the ones that are multicolored are neutral cards. Now, her take on some of the cards might be a little bit different from mine, and we'll go into that when we look at the cards individually. But I think this is really helpful. It's a really good way to help readers get a sense of positivity, negativity, neutrality. Now, my take on that is a little bit more nuanced. And how would she have gone with positive neutral, negative neutral in this kind of system? I'm not sure. It might have been a little bit too distracting to have had 5 different colors of butterfly. Yeah, the positive one, the negative one, the neutral one, and then the positive neutral and the negative neutral, right? So I think her choices were brilliant. And again, love this deck. The size is good. I wish I could give you a link for you to go and get this deck. I really, really do. She had 2 different sizes. She had this size, which is the big one, believe it or not, and still it's small enough to lay out a grand Lenormand, a grand tableau for me. Yeah, she's got an even smaller one, which is why I'm thinking of bringing this deck back if I do houses. If I do houses in a 9-card spread, because I would lay the smaller Lenormand cards on the larger ones, and we would read that way. So we'll see. Okay, so again, I'm sorry you can't get this deck, but it's a beautiful one, and I want to work with it with you, even if you can't get it, because, like I said, I think it's beautiful. Yes, what are we doing? Just in case you are new here or new to Lenormand, let me tell you what kind of spread it was you just saw. I call it a 9-card spread. Other people call it a picture frame spread. Other people call it a box spread. Choose your poison. Yeah, for me, it's a 9-card spread because it's got 9 cards and it's easy to remember. So we read this 9-card spread. We would also use this same reading technique if we read at Grand Tableau. Yeah, we could choose a significator card in the grand tableau and see the box around it, just like this one, and read that box in the grand tableau just as we're going to be reading this 9-card spread. So it's a very useful technique to have under your belt before you get to the grand tableau. Yeah? And we're going to read it, like I said, in several ways. We'll read the columns in terms of time. So the column on the left would be the past, the column in the center is the present, the column in the right is the future. Then we'll also read rows. The row on top is what's in our minds, what's in coming down from above, perhaps. The column in the center is what we're experiencing in the real world, and the column below, not the column, the row in the center, the row below is what's in our unconscious or what's going on below the surface, right? And the question we ask every week is, how can we live our lives more intentionally in the coming week? So we've got perhaps last week, this week, next week, or near past, present, and near future. What's in our heads, what's going on in the world around us, and what's going on below the surface, or what's in our unconscious, right? And then we'll also read things like the corners. We'll read the diamond around the center. We got a lot of ways to read this spread. Are you all ready? So friends, let me show you the spread once more, just so you get a refresher. Take a look at those butterflies, and we'll start reading together. Here's the spread. Friends, let me just remind you what cards were there. Yeah, we had in the upper left-hand corner the mountain, then the coffin, and then the sun. Then starting on the left in the center, we had the the cross, the rider, and then the bouquet. And then below those, starting from the left, we had the star, the house, and the man. The man, the significator. So we're reading this spread for all of us through me. And so the significator card for us is the man. I'm not saying you got to be a man. I'm not calling you a man. I'm not pointing to any gender here. It's just that for me, I am the man, and I'm reading for us through me, right? So whether you're in a male body, you're in a female body, a trans body, a cis body, an intersex body, or you identify everything as non-binary, then still we are all the man. And if the lady or the woman had appeared, that would have all been our partner, whether we are straight, bi, cis, pan, asexual, whatever, right? So that's how we're reading this spread together. And we don't have the partner card here. And we'll talk a little bit about the artwork on the partner card when we get to, the significator card when we get to it, because I think it's really clever. And still we're reading it as the man, even though it's called the significator. Okay, so first, positivity, negativity. If we look at the butterflies alone, we'll see that there are 3 black butterflies, there are 3 white butterflies, and there are 3 neutral butterflies. So it's a very neutral spread according to Mendy's system, right? Now, coming into it from the way I learned it, right? I agree with all of this with a little bit of a nudge here or there, yeah? So for me, the mountain is negative, the coffin is not neutral negative, so we're starting off really on the negative tone, but the sun is a super positive card, yeah? It's the triple positive for me. So the sun wipes out the mountain, and it would actually also wipe out the cross, which is below the mountain, which is negative, yeah? And yes, so the sun balances out both the mountain and the cross. So we've got the coffin, which is neutral negative. We have the rider, which is positive. The bouquet, which is positive. That's another additional 2 positives. The stars, which are positive. the house which is neutral and positive, which balances out the coffin, and then the man which is neutral. So we've got a lot of positive elements here, taken the way I read Lenormand, yeah? So like I said, the coffin for me is neutral, negative, whereas in this system, it's just plain old negative, yeah? What are some other differences? I bring a little bit more of a positive spin to the house rather than just plain neutral, yeah? What else? There was another, the writer for me is positive instead of neutral. But I can see why somebody would shift the writer over to neutral, because sometimes the messages can be positive, sometimes the messages can be negative, right? But the bringing in of the message to me is positive, and that's the central card of this spread. Oh, playing cards. If we look at playing cards, what do we see? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 hearts, right? The most positive. We have 2 clubs, which for me are the most negative. So we've got an extra heart. No, we've got 2 extra hearts to balance out those. After we have the heart spade debate or the heart spade fight, we've still got a surplus of 2 hearts, right? We've got 2 diamonds and 1 spade. So the spade and the diamond knock each other off. But we've got 2 hearts and the diamond left over after all the fight. So that's also leaning us in the positive direction with playing cards. And yet, there is a feeling of weight and heaviness to the spread. So that's interesting. But we're going to start off with the writer card. Yeah? What a wonderful thing. The writer card. What is a writer? A writer is a person who brings messages. When we think of the time that the deck was created, the writer was the bearer of news. Yeah? If we think of, in the context of the United States, if you are in the United States or you've heard anything of United States history, we've got a very famous writer in our history from the United States, which is Paul Revere. And Paul Revere is the one who rode his horse around the area of the East Boston and warned everybody that, sorry if you're in the United Kingdom, but the British are coming, right? So he's the one who rode in with the message, a surprising message, a message that was quick, delivered perhaps by mouth. Yeah. Also think of the times in the United States of the Pony Express, where messages, not heavy packages, not bundles of mail, but small packages of letters were carried in satchels, light-ish satchels, by riders across large distances to get them quicker. Other mail would go in the Wells Fargo wagon, piled up in stagecoaches or on trains and move perhaps more slowly, especially before we got the railroad going across the United States. So the writer is the bringer of quick messages. It is a youthful person usually. It is most often male, the writer. I mean, traditionally in historically, the writers were more commonly male. And so this is news. It's things that jump into your life. It's messages. It could be somebody entering our lives. And it's interesting because this card is pointing, and I don't often read the writer directionally, but this card is very, very clearly a directionally pointed horse. So This horse is moving from the cross to the bouquet. The message from the burden is about something nice in the bouquet, right? So we've got maybe a shift of emotion, a shift of temperament in the spread here. From the heavy to perhaps the light. And if we look temporally in the spread, we get that sense too. But what kind of message are we bringing with this spread, with the writer? We have the modifying card of the mountain. And what is the mountain? A mountain is a big thing that stands in your way if you want to move from one place to another, right? Especially if it's a mountain range, and we got a mountain range here. But of course, we don't read Lenormand the same way we read Tarot. So on this Lenormand card, there's one mountain. On that Lenormand card, there's a range of mountains. So the range of mountains is more of a challenge than the single mountain. We don't read like that. Yeah, we do read easy path, difficult path, right? And if you notice, the easy path on this card seems to be on this side. Yeah, this side of the card looks steeper, more difficult. This side looks a little bit more gradual, a little easier. And you'll notice that the rest of the spread is off on this easier path. So even though the mountain is an obstacle card, the rest of the spread seems to be going through the easier path around the obstacle. So mountains are, like I said, obstacles. They block us, but they can also be challenges. Yeah, think of the people who climb up mountains like Mount Everest or K2. Those people who are mountain climbers, the mountain isn't an obstacle, it's a challenge. It's something to overcome. It's something to show your abilities by facing it, right? So there is that aspect of the mountain as well. It's not insurmountable. It's not a no card. For some people, this could be an enemy, but I don't see enemies in this spread. It could also be spiritual heights. I mentioned this a couple of times on the channel. One of the few times that I have gone up to the top of a mountain was back in 1997-ish, I think. Yeah, I went to the top of a mountain called Sorak-san in Korea, and a very easy way to get up for somebody, especially of my age, especially then, back in 1997. I could still get up there fairly easily because there are stairs going up most of the way. There's a gondola going up at least halfway up the mountain. Very easy. But the last bit of the climb was up boulders, and when I got up to the top of the boulders and I was scared, I'm very uncomfortable, if not almost panic-ridden, when I'm on surfaces that feel even slightly unstable. Height, no problem. Edges, cliffs, no problem if the ground is stable. If the ground is stable, I'm fine. If the ground is just a little bit wobbly, think a step stool. If a step stool is just a little bit wobbly, I am freaking out. I could go up a very, very high ladder and feel okay if it doesn't move at all. A little itty bitty step stool that wobbles a little bit gets me really unsettled. And so these rocks were a little bit felt a little bit unstable. Of course, they'd been there for centuries, but still, they shifted with weight, and that made me feel even more uncomfortable. But then when I got to the top, I thought, finally, not that big of a climb, but still, finally. And then the sun shone through the clouds, and I had this really spiritual moment there. So I can get that idea of the spiritual heights being part of the mountain as well. Also think the Olympians, top of Mount Olympus, right? So what is that saying? We could be getting messages from the heights, yeah, from the divine. We could be. Now we're going to read this mountain card in a few different ways. Yeah, but I think we're getting contact from above. And I'm not talking UFOs. I'm talking from the divine, from the celestial realms. Whether it's from our divination practices, whether it's in meditation, whether it's in prayer, whether it's in noticing synchronicities around us, I think we're getting messages from, whether it's going to an astrologer, from the divine. We're getting information coming into our lives at a rapid pace and perhaps a bit surprisingly in this coming week. And I think that's what this spread is about. I think. I might contradict myself. I might discover, nope, Derek, you're wrong. But let's start there and see if this spread plays out okay with that idea. We're going to start with the columns. Yeah, we'll go from the past, and the past begins with this card. Yeah, the mountain. And I think we're talking about challenges here. Now we are coming through some challenging times. It doesn't say that we've finished with the challenge, but from the recent past, we are moving through challenging times, right? And those challenging times are being lifted up by the cross. And the cross is what? It's the Christian tool of execution of God, right? The God-man Christ is executed on the cross. But it's also our spiritual symbol for Christians. And remember, the folks who made this deck were Christian people, right? It's from a very strong Christian tradition. The Germans were probably mostly Lutheran at the time, and the French were mostly Catholic, but still very Christian traditions that this deck was invented in. So the cross is a strong symbol of burden, but also fate and destiny. It has a spiritual meaning, and it's also read directionally in the way I was taught. So the top of the cross is what lifts things up, raises things, makes it more like the destiny. Yeah, so the obstacle, the challenge that we've been moving through has been part of our life path and may have brought the possibility of a spiritual awakening. Yes? Why? Because what the cross is resting on is the star. This is interesting because some decks call this card the stars, plural. This and only have a couple of stars. This deck has many stars, and yet it is called the star card. So, star card, stars card, not a big deal. Positive card, right? Good fortune. What are the stars? The stars are things we guide ourselves by. They are signs of celestial information for us to divine. Yes? They are the lights in the night sky that create beauty. Do you remember times when you were outside of a city, or maybe you're outside of a city now, and you look up at the sky and you see this patch of bright lights in the dark, dark sky, and it's just awesome. Yeah, it inspires awe. So the stars card is our good fortune. It's destiny, it's guidance, it's prophecy even. It could be being the star. We could be the star. I don't see that in this spread, but we could be the star sometimes as well. Also, our spirituality and our psychic energy are directed in this card. So, what do we see? We see the mountain above the being lifted up by the cross, and the cross is weighing down, is depressing our good fortune, our path forward, or even our spirituality. So, while those challenges in the recent past have perhaps been lifted up by the cross, there have also been a burden, I think, which has depressed or suppressed our feeling of our spirituality. Our spirits have been weighed down by the challenges, even though those challenges are for our perhaps spiritual good. Why would that be? Sometimes we require a challenge and obstacle or even burden to take the next evolutionary step, to be able to overcome and escape from or release ourselves from the burden, from the obstacle. To overcome and release ourselves from these things is part of our evolutionary path. And without those challenges, those obstacles, we wouldn't have had the need to evolve further at that time and at that place. Does that make sense? So, even though it seems heavy and difficult and challenging, not in like, I accept this challenge, but challenging, yeah? It's for our good. And I'm not necessarily speaking in the way that now the word is gone. It was just at the tip of my tongue. The optimists, as in the school of optimism from the 18th century. My centuries might be a little bit wobbly here, but from the 18th century, the optimists that everything occurs for the best of all possible reasons and for the creation of the best of all possible worlds. For example, from Candide, yeah, by Voltaire, who was not an optimist and was speaking against the optimists. But still, I'm not speaking from that school of optimism, but rather, I think the truth, the arc of history bends towards justice. I think we have the right to, and it is correct to believe that we are on a path of evolution towards greater and greater good. And yes, sometimes it's take one step forward, two steps back, but we're still moving in the direction of greater good, greater evolution, greater understanding, greater enlightenment, individually and collectively. And sometimes to get that kick in the butt to start the next cycle of evolution, those challenges and burdens are beneficial for us. To be the impetus for, the impetus for the dinosaurs to become birds, for example. Yeah? Instead of just dying out, the environmental trauma that they survived through becoming birds was perhaps for the greater good of the planet, for the greater good of their species. Right? The reptiles also. You know? So, yes, difficult things can be for our benefit. And we'll probably come back to that later on. But let's look at what's going on in the present. Now, in the present, we start off with the coffin. Yes, what is a coffin? A coffin is where we put dead bodies. And we put them in the coffin so that we can fairly quickly stick them in the ground and we don't have to see them again. Right? It's because the dead body does not look pretty after several days usually. Now, there are some magnificent cases where the body is incorrupt. You can see some of those bodies in churches in Italy, for example. Bodies in glass coffins, and still we put them in coffins. They're glass coffins, but still we put them in coffins to keep them separate from the rest of the world. So there's an endedness there, right? There's a finishing. There's loss of obvious life there. And coffins are the center of mourning, right? The feeling of emptiness. Also stagnation and cancellation, if you will. They can also be a box. I don't think we're looking at boxes here. They can be a box, the actual physical box. We can also read the coffin directionally. And that will, I think, be more important later, where the head is what is a strong end and the feet is are a diminishing end, maybe. If so, this coffin's head seems to be pointing towards the mountain, so the obstacle seems to come to an end in the present time. Or the challenge seems to come to an end in the present moment. And this coffin, this ending, is above the writer. So, it's the ending of messages, right? The ending of messages coming to our home, our house. A house is where? Is what? I mean, this is the place we live. It's the place we feel safe. It's a place where our families gather. It's a place where we keep out intruding eyes. So there are ideas of home. It could actually be the physical structure of the house, yes? It could be property inheritance if we're reading a spread related to that, but that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at our homes, right? Our safe space, our privacy, our home ground, our base ground, where we feel safe and secure and stable. And we have a king here, a king of hearts, so it could be an older gentleman who's a bit of a house husband, is one who cares for other people, a family man, yeah, a father figure kind of person. So, if you have somebody like that in your life, I do not. If you have somebody like that in your life, then the messages could be coming from that person. But I think these are maybe sad messages, maybe messages of endings. Or is it the ending of messages? Ending of messages coming to our safe space. Okay, so this is a little difficult. If the writer were on top of the coffin, I'd say yes, very clearly. We have the writer bringing messages of endings, right? But here we've got something else. Now, we've got the endings, an ending of messages coming to our home space. So, Have you been receiving messages recently? People coming, visiting you? I don't know. If so, then maybe fewer people will be coming. Perhaps less communication will be coming in. So this is a bit of a challenge here for me. Let's move on to the future. And maybe that looking at the future will help me understand this present moment a little bit more clearly. We start off with the sun. Yes, the sun, the supercharged positive card, which is happiness, it's success, it's growth. Now, it's the bright light that gives life to our planet. And this bright light gives life to our reading. Yes? It's the warmth. It's beauty, the beautiful things in life. It's that which wakes us up. And that which gives warmth to our daily lives, but also to our hearts. It's the symbol of the divine in the sky as well, the sky god. So from that we have the bouquet. And let's just think about this for a moment. The sun shines down on the bouquet, on the flowers. And what is a bouquet? A bouquet is something that was traditionally used as a sign of favor, as a sign of intimate or at least friendly interactions. People would bring flowers to other people when they were invited to their homes, or to get invited to their homes. Men would bring flowers to women to be accepted by them as potential suitors. Flowers can sometimes come with an attached expectation of getting something in return. Yeah, you give flowers sometimes and anticipate that the recipient of the flowers will give you something in return. For example, an invitation, their time, their attention. There have been studies that show that when we receive flowers, most people smile. Flowers bring joy. Flowers bring happiness. And flowers grow under the light of the sun. So, this sunshine, this warmth, this happiness is the happiness of good fortune. It's the happiness of happiness. It's the warmth of happiness. It's the warmth of pleasure, right? And it might be the warmth of charming interactions with other people. Because the burden card is not very close to the bouquet card. I don't see that this receipt of a gift is coming with the burden. Yeah, I think this might be a sign of release from the burden. And that is interesting. Okay, I forgot to mention the queen. So if we do have this person, the queen here in our lives, what kind of a woman is she? She's a diplomatic woman. She's charming and stylish, and she has good opinions. So someone you'd want to listen to. So this warmth and happiness of this woman can be coming into our lives. If you have somebody like that you know, or if you run into somebody like that, that's wonderful. Add that person into your reading. But I think we're not talking about a person here, but rather the happiness and the warmth and the beautiful things in life, including flowers, including good fortune, including perhaps even receiving gifts. Having a sense of charm and the refinement of a beautiful life is what is coming to us, right? That is what's coming to us. Because right below that is us, the significator. Yeah? Oh, what did I wanted to mention? Look at this card carefully. Look at it closely. Can you see it? Do you see the two faces there? Do you see one of them looking like a man, one of them looking a little bit like a woman? So one of the brilliant things I think about this deck is that instead of having 4 different significator cards where there would be a man and a woman for card number 28, and then another 2 cards, a man and a woman, for cards 29, so you could match up homosexual pairs, or you could match up male-female pairs. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that that's a bad option. I like that, actually. But I think this is a very clever option to just have both male and female images on the significator card, and then another card, 29, being the partner card, right? I think that's one of my favorite ways of working around this gender thing within the Lenormand. So, that being said, still, this happiness, the sun, it's all shining down upon us in the near future. So I think this message writer thing is there's an ending of perhaps unhappy or uncomfortable, depressing, challenging messages coming into us now. And that will be leading us towards, in the near future, more light and happiness and good fortune and enjoyment of life. Perhaps even more enjoyment of our spiritual lives as well. Now let's look at what's going on for us now, in our heads, in the real world, and in the below the surface. So on our minds, and perhaps because we're coming from this recent past of the challenges that are perhaps burdensome but still necessary, yeah, in our headspace, we start off with the challenge, right? They're in this order for you. Yes, yes. So the challenge, this challenge is ended, right? It's a very strong end to the challenges that we've been experiencing in the recent past. And that's what we've got on our mind, that the ending of these challenges will bring the sun, happiness, warmth, joy, the beautiful things in life. So maybe we're thinking about ending these challenges and how good we will feel once those challenges are ended. And yet, have you ever noticed that the more you think about, I wish these challenges would end, the longer that they will endure because you're carrying them forward with you into the future? So it's something to be aware of, I think, that we may be extending the shelf life of those challenges that might be a little burdensome because we're thinking about them too much, instead of letting them end, right? Which could, as we think about them too much, they could decrease the amount of happiness coming to us in the future if we keep bringing them forward into the future, right? And then what's happening in our lives? Well, we start off with the cross, right? Which has a spiritual meaning. And things that are to the right of the cross are enforced. They're strengthened. So this cross is strengthening these messages coming into us. Messages of good fortune, of happiness, of pleasure, maybe even gifts, maybe messages of beauty and grace, maybe even invitations to parties or something, invitations to hang out with friends. But these messages, let me put it this way, the messages of so we've got this burden which is perhaps spiritual, that is giving us messages, right? That sends out messages to us that are fortunate, that may include invitations to go out and interact with other people. Does that make sense? We might be getting like a kick in the butt to get out there and enjoy life. In the real world, not in our heads, not in our imaginations, and not even necessarily coming up from the unconscious, but in the real world, we might be getting these kicks in the shins to get out there and enjoy life. Now? And so below the surface, what do we have? Well, we have the stars shining on our home space, right? So, under the surface, there is direction, good fortune, guidance even, through our space of security and stability. Now, in our home ground, in the roots of ourselves. Now, this is where the good fortune or the direction and our guidance are coming from. Coming from and to us. Right? So, below the surface, perhaps in the unconscious, perhaps just below our conscious awareness, which is a little slightly and subtly different from the unconscious, there's this psychic energy, perhaps, or even our guidance, our spirituality, arises through our sense of stability and safety and pointing the direction for us, to us. Does that make sense to you? Remember, this whole spread is about messages coming in and messages that are challenging. But in that context, we're moving from the challenge to the sunlight and success of the future. And that though those challenges and the obstacles have been, I think, spiritually not necessary, not required, but spiritually beneficial for us. We might not be fully aware of them now, but still, allowing those thoughts to end and not carrying those challenges forward into the future, allowing those messages to come to a close with the coffin and the writer, will allow us to settle down into our safe spaces of the house. And from there, we're guided into the sun shining down on the bouquet of flowers for us, right? Does that make sense? And the thing that will diminish that sunlight, as we saw at the top row, is when we keep focusing on the challenges and the difficulty. And we're hoping that these challenges will end soon. That the more we continue those thoughts into our future, which I think for you would be in this direction, into our future, the more that diminishes the sunlight and the triple positivity of the sun that we talked about earlier. Does that make sense? So friends, let me show you the spread once more. I'll show you the spread, and we'll read this spread in a couple of different ways to see if we get more evidence of that, or to see if the message is going to be changed in some way or other, right? Okay, so friends, here's the spread once more. Friends, let's start with the corners. Yes? We'll start with the corners with the mountain and the man. So what does that mean? The mountain and the significator, the mountain and us. Yeah? So these two cards together, they're pointing towards our obstacles, our challenges. They're not insurmountable. And I think they do bring us up to a spiritual height, or they are coming from the spiritual heights. I think they are coming from our spiritual heights, that these are challenges for our benefit. Yeah? Now, these challenges are coming from the heights down to us. That's pretty clear. And the next two cards really point towards, we're being guided towards this is the sun and the stars, right? We're guided towards our happiness and our good fortune. That the stars point the way to the sun, to our light, to beauty and warmth and success and growth. Yeah? Now, if we look at the diamond, we see that the first two cards which are related are the cross and the coffin. So what? So what? So what? We've got this the ending is a burden. But the ending is also this space for the spiritual growth. Yeah? The ending and the loss is what allows us to resurrect. Right? The whole point of the cross in the Christian tradition is resurrection. Without resurrection, there is no Christianity and there's no meaning to the cross. The cross is the tool for resurrection. So the ending, the suffering of the ending is for the rebirth. Yes? And the rebirth is to feeling grounded and stable in beauty and good fortune and creativity and grace. Does that make sense? What other things can we look at? Let's look at our guidance. Yeah? What are the stars pointing towards? Down there in the center. The stars are pointing towards. Now, if we're going with knighting, now first, the stars mirror us. The stars mirror the significator. So these are our stars, yeah? The stars and us. We are mirrors of each other, and it's our guidance. It's our destiny. It's our direction. But what kind of a direction are we pointed towards? Well, if we knight, which means we move over 2 and up 1, or we move over 1 and up 2. And really with the stars, whether we move over 2 and up 1, over 2 and up over 1, or we go over 1 and up 2, over 1 and up 2, we get to the same 2 cards. So the stars, Knight 2, the coffin and the bouquet. The coffin and the bouquet. Now, what is that trying to tell us? Now, the stars, our guidance is towards an ending that the ending leads to the beauty. Right? The beauty flows from the mourning, which could be read, which could be understood in 2 different ways, right? The mourning, tears, mourning, leads to beauty. But also the morning of the sun, which is above the flowers too, right? The sun comes up in the morning and brings us beautiful flowers. The flowers of morning, the flowers of morning. Maybe that's even the title. But does that make sense to you? Do you see how that's where our guidance is? Our guidance is from the flowers that grow from the coffin. From the ending of a spiritual challenge. I don't know. Have you the words are here. Have you been moving through a dark night of the soul? We want to be very careful, I think, when we talk about the dark night of the soul, because that phrase has been overused and become fairly meaningless in modern society. It was a phrase that was coined back in the 17th century, perhaps, in Spain by John of the Cross, who was besties with Saint Teresa of Avila, both in Spain. And the dark night of the soul is not just depression, it's not just sadness. While sadness and depression are serious things, dark night of the soul is something altogether different. It's not just the dark night, it's the dark night of the soul. What does that mean? It means, very specifically, a feeling of disconnection and isolation from God, from the divine light of the sun. That is the dark night of the soul. It's when you feel alone, isolated, in the dark, away from the divine light of God, away from the divine light of God's love. It doesn't mean that that's actually what's going on, but that's the feeling of it, being cut off entirely from the light of divine love and alone. So first, you'd have to have an experience of the radiance of divine light of love to be able to experience that feeling of being cut off from that. So again, like I said, it's not just depression. It's a very specific feeling. Have you ever felt that? Have you felt isolated from the divine or cut off from the love of the divine, whatever you consider the divine to be? It does not have to be the Christian God. Yes? It could be whatever you think of as being that which has always been and is our source of life. Whatever you imagine that to be. Have you felt cut off from that and isolated from that and in the dark? Like buried in a cave, away from all the divine light. Have you ever felt that? If you have, this is really your reading. But it doesn't even have to be that serious. Yes, maybe we've all been feeling the weight of challenge, of spiritual challenge. Is that good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? The weight of divine challenges, of divine and spiritual difficulties are a blessing for us because they are the ignition key. They are the spark that sets off our evolution and our growth. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. Yes? Right now, our recent spiritual challenges are the cause of and the source of our evolution into a new, brighter, loving, more warmer, more enlightened, sunnier path of growth. So what do we do? Do we curse the challenge or do we bless the challenge? Do we carry that challenge forward into our near future and darken it? Or do we allow it to exist as it has existed and we allow ourselves to move forward free of it? I think we have the opportunity to do both. We get to make the choice. We don't have the choice card here. We don't have the path card here. But I think we have the choice to either bring the darkness forward with us so that we are, even though we move into the sun, we are weighed down. Or we can allow ourselves to recognize the ending of the challenge and move into the beauty of the sunlight as we've followed the direction that we get from within, from our stars, our inner North Star. I know the path that I think I would want to choose. Hopefully I will be able to do it. Which path would you choose? You know yourself, I hope. Which path do you normally choose? Do you normally choose to carry the burdens of the past forward with you into the bright sunny days on the beach? Now, do you go out onto the beach and as you lay there on the sun and you think, oh man, it's been so difficult, it's been so hard, all these horrible things have happened to me? Or do you go out onto the beach and you lie there and you think, what a blessing, what a relief, how wonderful? Which is your habit? And if one of them is your habit and you want the other, can you change? I think you can. I think we can. I think I can. Summer is coming. We are moving through probably what will be a brief spring into a long summer, but still, the summer is coming. And are we going to carry the burdens of the past with us into the summer? Or are we going to allow ourselves to enlighten? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Does this mean anything for you? If it does, let me know in the comments below. If you would read this spread differently, also, let me know. Friends, in just a moment, the QR code and my web address for my online tarot shop will pop up, and you can head on over there and take a look at what I have. Scan the QR code or just type in my web address, DerekJohnThomas.com. Take a look, see what's there. And now, friends, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.